complex, much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.
Good afternoon. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II, and I'd like to welcome you back to Not on My Watch. As always, I'd like to ask you to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I want you to retweet this video and repeat this. I want to also remind our viewers that the views expressed on this series and this episode are not reflective of those of the views of the board of Human TV, of course, our host for this series. If you're watching, today is September 28th, 2018, and we are, finding ourselves 39 days out from the November 6th midterm elections, which will determine which of the two major parties has control of certainly the House of Representatives and potentially the United States Senate. And it's a very pivotal time in our country. I want to point out that this Tuesday, a few days ago, was National Voter Registration Day. So there were a lot of different sort of campaigns online, whether it was like Google or YouTube or accounts on Twitter, focusing specifically on how to get registered to vote, how to make sure that you're registered on time, looking into those situations. Like I said, we're 39 days out from the election. And so most states, there are states that have different levels of registration. Some states have same-day registration. Other states have voting deadlines to register to vote that are approximately 2 weeks prior to an election. And still other states, the most strict rules in any state in the United States is that you must be allowed to register to vote up to 30 days or no fewer than 30 days before the election. Which means for everyone watching this, you have at least 9 days to make sure that you are registered to vote. In your city, make sure that you're registered to vote at your proper district. Make sure that your precinct hasn't changed or your polling location has not changed. Because all of those things are going to be critically important on the day of to have an impact. And again, we're talking about specifically a focus on the House of Representatives. And so you'll notice that when it comes to gerrymandering and some of the other things that we've seen happen over the last several years that have really influenced our elections, it will come down to and impact greatly this particular race on the 6th of November. So make sure that you are registered to vote if you haven't already. Other significant news this week is that Bill Cosby was sentenced to prison. And it's amazing to me that even with this culture of these rich, powerful, wealthy men, well off, who skirt through their careers and assault women and rape women and get away with it for decades, multiple decades. And then once the accusations begin to unfold, there is such a profound and rampant culture of not believing the accusers for whatever reason. And I specifically am talking about the accusations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh by Dr. Christine Ford. Now, yesterday, I watched the testimony a couple times. I watched both of them. I was sickened by what I saw, because you had a situation where every 5 minutes or every 3 minutes, however long their questioning sessions were, I found myself muting the TV because I could not bring myself to hear what the GOP senators were bringing up in attacks against Dr. Ford. Now, to the extent that you want to discuss how the accusations are hurting Brett Kavanaugh, they were also hurting Dr. Ford, who really had no motivation. And she said this in her testimony, that it wasn't about tearing him down. It wasn't about being mean. It wasn't about some grudge. What her purpose was to alert somebody who has decision-making power in this case that this man is unfit to serve in this capacity, and that knowing he was on a short list, she wanted to get it out beforehand so that another choice could be made by the president for that nomination. Now, I think the fact that Brett Kavanaugh is a alleged sloppy drunk and gang rapist, according to his friends, I think that would have emboldened President Trump's choice to nominate him. And like I said last week, the decision to nominate Kavanaugh is not about him being some person who is a federal judge already. It's not about that. There's a specific reason why this person is being forced through this process in this way. Now, what I don't, to this point, understand is why Gorsuch was put up first. If it was so important that Kavanaugh was placed in this position, why didn't that come up before? But I also think that when you look at the timing of the midterms, you look at the timing of Justice Kennedy's resignation, and when this seat became available in time to get this done before the midterms, I think it was very important and very deliberate that this seat was orchestrated, that this movement was orchestrated by President Trump, because he knows that if Brett Kavanaugh is in place and confirmed prior to the midterm elections, one, it adds so many layers of protection to him. And we know that Brett Kavanaugh is basically in the pocket for the GOP. He is not going to be an impartial representative for the American citizens. How do I know that? Based on his testimony yesterday. Now, you had a series of really amazing events unfold during this hearing. You had Dr. Ford, who is being questioned by a representative of the GOP. Every single GOP senator who is charged with doing this investigation, advising and consent, and really the same ones who were saying they don't recommend a FBI hearing because they can handle it, for some reason were incapable of asking questions of this witness, Dr. Ford, which I think to me shows the fact that they are incapable of handling cases like this, which is why the FBI, which is why it was so critical to have an outside body like the FBI be a participant. They had Rachel Mitchell, who's an attorney, doing all of the questioning for Dr. Ford. Now, I don't want to talk about Rachel Mitchell. You'll make up your opinion about her. Everyone saw the hearing. I don't have anything to say about her at all. And I just think that it's sad that you had GOP senators who could not bring themselves to even ask the witness a question. They deferred every single question to this other person who is not an elected official, this person who is not entrusted by American citizens or voters to behave in a particular way or to conduct this type of a hearing. They just sort of deflected all of the responsibility of that to this other attorney, which I thought was really, really lazy on their part. Dr. Ford, she seemed very sincere, obviously. She was very open about her emotions and open about how she felt. She mentioned being terrified before the hearing started. She frequently sort of explained if there was a clarification or something needed, something that she didn't understand, she explained it. There seemed to be a very intentional focus on the GOP questioning side to highlight sources of funding for her legal team, sources of funding for the polygraph test that she took, questioning her ability as a psychiatric or a psychological professional to any awareness that she might have had or brilliance that she might have brought into the table to cheat a polygraph test or to know how to lie to the court or present false evidence. They seem to continually undermine aspects of her story, specifically by basically making it as though her whole claim and everything about how her presence on the national stage came to be was orchestrated by the Democrats just to stop Kavanaugh's confirmation. I will defer you to the at-length hearing. I think it's a watershed moment for our country. I think it's incredibly important that everybody witness it. As sickening as it was to watch how those men in the GOP and with the help of Rachel Mitchell tried to tear this person down, who bravely stepped forward and spoke for herself and spoke for all, essentially in some ways, all women in the United States. I watched the programming on C-SPAN, and I want to talk briefly about what I saw on C-SPAN as a viewer, as opposed, and this is just prior to discussing what I observed in the Kavanaugh's aspect of the testimony. C-SPAN is supposed to be impartial, right? They're not like a cable network, but they are on cable, but it's supposed to be public. And it's supposed to be sort of balanced and transparent. They had this call-in line, of course. They have the call-in line, the number for Republicans, the number for independents, and also the number for Democrats. And what I kept noticing was that they would take the Republican line first, then it would go to an independent line, then it would go to a Democratic line. But most of the callers, a lot of the callers were women, and a lot of them were Republican or independent. Many of them were calling in to express that they didn't believe certain aspects of Dr. Ford's testimony and why. Many of them prefaced their statements by the fact that they had also been victims or survivors of sexual assault. One that stuck out to me was when there was a moment in the testimony where Attorney Mitchell asked Dr. Ford sort of what was the most vivid memory of the night of the assault and the alleged assault. And I'm saying all this to say that I intentionally say alleged assault because really you don't want to be defaming someone who, for all intents and purposes, is highly likely to become a Supreme Court judge and will have much influence on the definitions as they relate to workplace harassment and also sexual assault and sexual violence in this country. And so I advise anyone commenting on this stuff now to be crystal clear on what you're saying and be very self-protective, because you won't be able to rely on any aspects of the government to protect you if you say something that's libelous legally. Moving back, these women are calling in to C-SPAN. And they're talking about, this particular one said, Dr. Ford in her testimony said that the most vivid memory she had of the assault, alleged assault, was when Brett Kavanaugh allegedly put his hand over her mouth to stop her from screaming, and that she thought that accidentally he was going to kill her. She thought that because he was so drunk and so aggressive that in holding her mouth, she couldn't breathe, that he might actually end up killing her because she wasn't able to breathe. Terrifying on its own. Excuse me. That was one aspect of what she said was terrifying. What she said was the most vivid memory was that Brett and Mark Judge were actually laughing during the entire assault. That's what she said was the most vivid memory. Now, this caller said that she doesn't believe Dr. Ford's testimony because if she were there and she were the one being assaulted, the most vivid thing she would remember was her mouth being covered, not the laughing of the abusers. She further went on, and this was call after call after call. People were calling in women to be their own Wikipedia Browns and point out these lines and try to take down lines of Dr. Ford's testimony, saying, oh, well, I don't believe that it happened because the first thing she said that happened when she got upstairs was that they locked the door behind her when they went into the room and turned the music up. But then when Mark Judge jumped on the bed and toppled all three of them over and Dr. Ford got away, then she was too easily able to get outside of the door. And because her recount of the story explains that she so easily got out of a locked door, where this female caller to C-SPAN claims that, oh, well, that to her means she's lying about all of it because, as the caller suggests, she herself would not have been able to unlock the door, as frantic as she would have been if that really happened. So again, I just want to point out that we are in the era of propaganda, and really, where media reports opinions as facts, and there's these open forums that are supposed to be balanced. So there's a Republican line and an independent line and a Democratic line, and everyone can call in and we'll pepper them, systemically. Like we'll have the Republican caller, then an independent caller, then a Democratic caller. Anyone could call as a Republican or a Democrat and say that they're either, and then make a case for one or the other. I saw men calling in to discuss all of the reasons why the accuser shouldn't be listened to, that Dr. Ford was just, there as a part of this conspiracy theory, and it really was truly repulsive. C-SPAN had a segment where they discussed how other countries around the world were discussing the hearing. They quoted RT, I think Russia Today, which we know is a state propaganda arm of Vladimir Putin, had their headline run as one of the, around the world reports of what was going on. And so it sucks. It just really sucks when you have your objective source of media that you go to, like C-SPAN or PBS, and then even their coverage of what's going on is tainted in a way. Or it's maybe not intentionally tainted, but it's susceptible to the same type of smearing and influence and propaganda to just shift the viewer's focus to something else. And that was what this entire hearing became. It shifts over to Judge Kavanaugh, and he gives this super emotional, super sobby, rageful, tearful account of what happened, which really wasn't an account of what happened. He didn't address anything of the allegations. He basically said he never knew her, he wasn't there, it didn't happen, she's lying about all of it, and how dare she make up this stuff because he was such a great student in high school, he has all these great accomplishments, he was so accomplished in college, he played basketball, he coaches girls basketball, he has daughters. He kept talking about everything but the attack. And he kept trying to make this case that because he had good grades, it didn't matter that he was a sloppy drunk. Because he had good grades, it didn't matter that he was an aggressive drunk and violent, and that there were all these accusations against him. It was underscored that the additional allegations brought forward by Michael Avenatti really were more fuel to the fire of this Democratic-led plot. And it was all framed around the idea that because Dianne Feinstein, who was originally alerted by Dr. Blassey-Ford that this assault had happened, allegedly, And because she asked for anonymity and Feinstein kept that request, that they then kept making this case that the timing of it was so to delay and distract the confirmation until after the midterms. Whether you believe that or not, whether that's a part of the strategy or not, to me, when it comes down to a lifetime appointment, it should stand the test of any delay or any period of time needed to vet that candidate. The fact that they're plowing right through it with Kavanaugh is just more proof that this whole process is illegitimate. It's orchestrated by Mitch McConnell, it's orchestrated by Donald Trump, and it's very intentional and purposeful to make sure that this particular person, Brett Kavanaugh, is placed in that seat by or before the midterm elections. That is the objective of the Republican Party. I don't want to talk about the testimony anymore, but I do want to talk briefly about some of the outbursts that happened the day of, including Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who gave an Oscar-worthy performance, and if they gave out Oscars for dramatic breakdowns, he would be at the top of the list, because his grandstanding was so over the top and so unnecessary and so dramatic and so fake. It just really was disappointing. I mean, and again, I always say that you have to have faith in someone to be disappointed in them, but that was disappointing to watch, because he was just so passionate about how unfairly Brett Kavanaugh was being treated. And as a result, you've got this hero, or shero rather, in Dr. Christine Blassey-Ford being further vilified, further called a liar, further railroaded by the GOP. The two parties are simply not the same. I want to just make that very clear, because Democrats were only calling for an FBI investigation. They weren't calling for Kavanaugh to withdraw. They weren't falsely accusing him of anything. They were saying, get the facts out, get the independent facts, and Kavanaugh, you should be willing to ask the president for the FBI to investigate. Of course, Kavanaugh was not willing to do that. Of course, no one on the GOP was willing to do that. Of course, the president himself is not going to do that. And so you have a setup where it's a perfect scheme for Brett Kavanaugh, because if he pushes forward for an FBI investigation, it can only mean that, one, facts are going to come out that he's not going to want out there before he's given this lifetime appointment. And it really could result in him being completely disbarred and or impeached from his current position as a federal judge. So he doesn't have anything to gain by the truth coming out. He really doesn't. It's in his better interest to just stay the course one way or the other. He would never benefit from withdrawing, because he can't withdraw without acknowledging some wrongdoing with regard to these allegations. And that would render him incapable of doing many of the things he would need to do to sustain a living. So it makes perfect sense to me why he wouldn't push for that, why he wouldn't want that. And the GOP is protecting him just like he plans to protect the GOP. They were both they're a match made in hell, basically, because they need each other to pull through this time. And I don't think they could bring somebody else up in a nomination, and I don't think they have anyone else primed to take on that role, because Donald Trump has had sort of disappointments with people like Jeff Sessions recusing themselves from certain cases. And they needed someone in place like Brett Kavanaugh who was not going to do that, who was going to be able to kind of get in with a clean slate, per se, and really be an active stooge for Donald Trump. And that is what Kavanaugh exists to do. This morning, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to advance the nomination, which means tomorrow they're going to go through another number of procedural votes in the aim by Mitch McConnell of bringing the final Senate vote to floor as early as Tuesday. Now, this is discouraging because they took this vote the day after this testimony from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, which means, and it was already scheduled to happen before she even testified, which means There was nothing that they were intending to hear from her that would even persuade them to consider having a further investigation based on what she said in her testimony. There was nothing there, there was nothing done, and up to this point there was nothing delayed. No senator on the GOP side, including Jeff Flake, who everyone was hoping would be a decider in this, has confirmed that he's going to vote for Kavanaugh. You had some Democrats who were wishy-washy on the issue. Doug Jones confirming that he would vote against Kavanaugh. So I don't think it's completely a go yet. I don't think it has much potential to be dead in the water at this point or delayed. But there are 3 or 4 days before this Saturday, Sunday, Monday. There's 3 to 4 days before this this vote officially happens and the confirmation would happen. And so who knows what could happen. But that's where we are now. Everyone right now is sort of disappointed in Jeff Flake, and I'm not disappointed in Jeff Flake because Flake is a flake. That's what he always does. He always talks a good game about how he feels and the emotions and everything, but when it comes down to it, he votes in accordance with his party. And that's what all of the GOP members do. And we have to be very, very clear about documenting what's happening, where it comes down to these party lines and how these members of the Senate and the House of Representatives vote, because there's always going to be the claim that both parties are the same. Another call-in to the C-SPAN line was specifically calling for the end of the two parties. This was a woman. And I'm like, girl, that's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about third parties. We're not talking about two parties. We're not talking about party lines. We're talking about sexual assault. And I will also say that many of the callers were women who discussed very emotionally and used that call-in line that day to express that they themselves had been victims or survivors of sexual assault. Many of them tearful during the hearing. I think it might have been sort of a relief for some people to call in and finally get it off their chest in an anonymous form that they had been attacked by a family member or someone in college. I mean, and the stories kept coming, so I don't want to make it seem that it was all these women calling in to defend Kavanaugh. That's not what was happening. Although I will also say that there was a moment where they had they really highlighted at length the speeches made in the protests for the pro-Kavanaugh protests that were held by women. It was Women for Kavanaugh. And I was just like, what is this about? So there's a lot of weird stuff going on, and it was very emotional, very draining, very sad. And with that, so there's a little breaking news. After having clearly changed out of my outfit and unmiked, it came out moments ago, and this would probably be about an hour before you're seeing this. Jeff Flake actually voted to advance the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, as we discussed in the episode, but the only condition is he requested a 1-week delay for an FBI investigation, but the final say on the investigation boils down to Mitch McConnell's choice and also the White House, as it always was. So we'll see whether they take heed to what Jeff Flake said. Jeff Flake, if he wanted to really forestall this, he could have voted no and insisted that there was, that there wasn't sufficient cause to move forward in the nomination. He instead voted yes. Then he requested that the White House initiate an investigation. But then he also, which is up to the White House or Donald Trump. And then you have Mitch McConnell, who gets the final say on whether the delay actually happens or not. So you can count on that or not count on that, but I just wanted to point that out. Thanks. I just want to invite you to follow the story. Look for the final vote to happen as early as Tuesday of next week. Sorry guys, that's my phone. Hello. Yeah, James, what do you want? I'm taping right now. What do you want? Sorry, hold a second to my producer. What do you mean something happened? The president did what? He authorized the FBI investigation into Kavanaugh? Which president? Donald Trump. Donald J. Trump. Okay. We just did this whole episode saying that he was never going to do that. Okay, well, how do you know it's not one of his other schemes? I mean, he does this all the time. Couldn't it just be that he authorized an investigation knowing that it's not going to show anything, or knowing that there's not going to be enough time, or even if something does come out of it, he's just going to try to cover it up and ram him through anyway, and then he'll be able to say that he did the right thing by authorizing an investigation? Yeah, but this is the same Donald Trump who this week tried to fire the deputy chair of the FBI and also constantly bashes the FBI. So, okay, you're right. We don't really comment on the news. We just talk about the facts. So the fact is that he did authorize an investigation. Okay. I'll say it. I'll let him know. I mean, I don't think it changes anything, but I'll let him know. Okay, is that it? What do you mean my tie is on backwards? Do you think it's noticeable? Well, of course you noticed. Okay, I don't think they're going to care. You don't care? Okay, good. All right, thank you. Thanks, James. I'm wrapping up now, and we're just going to move on forward. I think it'll be fine. I don't think this changes anything. All right, thanks for the call. Bye. We'll be right back. Make sure that you yourself are registered to vote. If you're in the United States and you're watching this, it means you have about 8 or 9 days at minimum. I mean, max. You have a minimum of 8 or 9 days to vote. Depending on your state, you might have more time than that to register to vote if you haven't already. So get your friends involved in the process. Get your family members involved in the process, and at least get them ready to vote. For that November 6th midterm date. Briefly, I want to talk about Human TV. A lot of progress is being made with the channel and the nonprofit. I have particularly been working on a project for another content creator. This unfortunately will not be airing on Human TV as of now because that wasn't the deal that we had. But just in terms of just my ability to work and establish a format of helping content creators put out their stories in a very authentic way, I'm excited about that. There's a show that's airing. I want to run a promo for that.
Thanks for logging on to House of Chappelle TV. I am Rico Chappelle, CEO of the legendary House of Chappelle. In the past 20 years, I've been traveling all over the world with my clients such as Toni Braxton, Kandi Burruss, Kelly Rowland, and a list of celebrities that I can't even count. And now I'm about to share the secret with you on a web series I called So Like a Pro. Each week I'll teach you a tutorial on a step-by-step rule of how I make anything from a fabulous evening gown to home decor and furnishings, all on a dime. This is So Like a Pro. You like the show?
I love the show.
Okay.
I love it.
And the show is called So Like a Pro. It's going to air on Sundays at 10 p.m. at Rico Chappelle's YouTube channel, which is Rico, or it's youtube.com/House of Chappelle TV. And so make sure to check that out. It's a really good program. It's a very good show, that if I do say so myself. And it was his original idea, but I helped by recording and editing the program. And I'm pretty excited about it. I want to encourage you all to become donor subscribers to the series. In the past, we really did a lot of just one-time donations was the call. And I really want to encourage you to subscribe as monthly donors, if you can, on the website. So human.tv/support. The monthly donations, you can donate as little as $1 a month, and that would be very helpful to the goal. You can subscribe up to one of the suggested donor amounts, anywhere from $10 a month to $50 a month to $250 a month. And at different tiers, we're going to offer some rewards. So there probably won't be much of a reward at the $10 a month level, but if you do $25 or $50 a month, we'll figure out some kind of incentive. But it's something we have to kind of plan out and work towards, and we'll be putting it all together. With that said, I want to thank our friends to the show for the week. That includes Stephanie S., Nora and Chris from Strong Tree Coffee, and also Stacy R. So thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to watch future episodes of Not On My Watch at human.tv. Become a donor subscriber at human.tv/support, and make sure to relax, relate, and resist. Thank you.
Too complex, much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.